believers, non-believers, unaffiliated believers, sort of believers, even you think I'm a believers, welcome. All my non-university unstudents, welcome to the Uncensored Unprofessor. Do you ever think to yourself, I want more out of my Christian faith? Well, this is a show for you who want to invite God into your minds. We all know to say, Jesus lives in my heart. But does he live in your mind, in your thinking? Today there are mountains of emoters out there, those who present their own feelings as the basis for Christianity. But those of us who believe truth exists, we need a deeper foundation. Emotions fade and change quickly. No, we need truth, rooted truth. The UU can help you grow in your Christian processing of reality. Oh, I'm glad to have you with me today. This is part 5 of my series on the common good, and today we're going to think about economics. No, I don't mean like, what would you do if you won the Powerball lottery kind of thinking. I mean, what might be a biblical understanding of economics? What's the basis for economics? And still further, I'm going to compare socialism versus capitalism. Hey, did you hear about the little boy who wanted $100 so badly that he prayed for 2 weeks? He prayed hard, he prayed long, and nothing happened. So he decided to write a letter to the Lord requesting the $100. And when the postal authorities received the letter addressed to the Lord, they decided to send it to President Trump. Well, the president was so impressed and touched and amused that he instructed his secretary to send the little boy a $5 bill, as that could appear to be a lot of money to a little boy. Well, when he got it, the little boy was delighted with the $5, but he sat down to write a thank you note to the Lord. It said, "Dear Lord, thank you very much for sending me the money. However, I noticed that for some reason you had to send it through Washington, D.C., and as usual, those jerks deducted $95. There's a little boy who understands how the government works. And I gotta say thank you to Free Funny Jokes for that one. But just how should Christians think about money, about economics? Well, purists might think that the Bible condemns money. But the truth is the Bible condemns the love of money because, of course, money can become an idol, is an idol. Geez, money can be a principality and a power. I mean, money is, for Earth's billions of people, it's a way of constructing reality where currency and capital and money is the center of the universe. And knowing that, Jesus said in Luke 16:13, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And in that verse, Jesus is carefully targeting what he teaches more broadly. For instance, in Matthew 6:21. Wherever your treasure is, there will your heart be. You see, mammon, M-A-M-M-O-N, mammon is not simply currency or dollar bills. Mammon is a restructuring of reality that builds out reality so that everything is about economics. And of course, in Scripture we know that anything that pretends to be the center of the universe is an idol, or a demigod, and eventually they become monsters that choke out true life. Paul, the apostle, he echoed Jesus in 1 Timothy 6:10 when he said, "The love of money is the root of all evil." Now we should know that in that context there in 1 Timothy, Paul is warning against false teachers who are in it for the money. He's not making a theological comment, a theological systematic comment about money. But in short, money can be an idol. And not just an idol for a single person's heart, but an idol for entire civilizations. I mean, it's certainly accurate to say that the West, no, our entire world today has been seduced by mammon. But is the Bible against people having money, being rich? Well, the short answer is no. The Bible holds up all kinds of heroes in the faith who, as it turns out, were blessed by God and rich. Noah, Job, Abraham, David, Joseph of Arimathea, who took Jesus' dead body down from the cross and anointed it with spices, or even the father in the parable of the prodigal son, or the vineyard owner in still another of Jesus' parables. They were all rich, and none of those were castigated by Jesus for their riches. Okay, there's a quick summary on the Bible and money. If you guys, if you want more depth, I did an episode on Jesus and riches. It's numbered 99. But in short, the Bible does not establish a set economic system. What'd he say? The Bible doesn't give us a set economic system. It does give us all kinds of virtues necessary for a functioning and just economic system, but it presents no favored system. And you can find books today written by people who say that it does. They're either naive or they're lying. So there's some stuff on the Bible. What about economics more broadly? Please, you guys. Economics are profoundly complicated. When I hear, or for me especially when I read, when I hear people address economics as though it's some binary, simple up or down, reductionistic this or that, or easy peasy black and white issue, I just cringe. One of my favorite biblical scholars does that in some of his books, and I just get a wrinkle in my liver. Dude, you don't even know what you're talking about. Please go do some careful study on economics before you say such embarrassing things. Economics are super complicated. How complicated, Ed? Super. And at least this side of the Renaissance, it's rarely as simple as, this nation has money because it took all of that stuff and money away from those nations kind of meme. But man, why do we hear that kind of thinking all the time? Because it is a meme. Memes are easy to understand. Memes stereotype people. Memes cause us to see life as a matter of villains and heroes. Don't be a meme economist. I should copyright that phrase, meme economist. Gosh, I should turn it into a Pomo magazine, the meme economist. Because it's how millions of college graduates think about politics and economics. They are binary, up or down, meme economists. Somebody stole somebody else's pie. Well, are there pie thieves? Yes, of course. But is that a nuanced way to process the complexity of economics? No. Mayo. More carefully, economics is not first a matter of power, as is so commonly taught. More carefully, economics is woven into the fabric of culture. Cultures do economics. Cultures make economics. Cultures foster economics. Or not. Cultures that foster trust have the best economic systems, cause the most widespread flourish. Well, let me back up a second. What we're really talking about here is human nature. What is human nature such that it is interested in or subject to economics? Because that's the real rub, right? What motivates people? Why do they do what they do? Now, I think Aristotle was right. Human beings are essentially lovers. We love and do and move and process reality based upon, derived from, our core loves. And again, 300 years after Aristotle, Jesus said the same thing. You are your treasure. You are your core love. And the reality is, you guys, when it comes to doing economics, some cultures understand how the human person is wired better than other cultures. And some cultures are better at doing economics than others. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
What cultures are better at it, Dr. Yu?
Cultures that foster trust. A few days ago, my car battery died. So I jump-started it, and I drove down to the local Les Schwab store. They sell good batteries, and they provide great service. You're welcome, Les Schwab. You just got $3 million worth of advertising for free. When I checked in, when I pulled up, they took my keys, got my name and keys, and without a signature even from me and without prepayment, we made a business deal. They trusted me. I was a stranger to them. They trusted that I'd return for my car and that I'd pay when I got back. And me, I trusted them that they'd install the battery we agreed to over the counter and that they'd do a good job. And the whole exchange was one of trust. I didn't know Darren, the service technician. He didn't know me. But the entire business transaction worked because we trusted one another. Trust is key to the cultural basis for economics. And that's because human nature is essentially conservative. We do what works, what has worked. We do what's safe. We work with people we trust. And if you violate that trust, we will ghost the local car battery shop. It's just the way we are. Put differently, cultures wherein familial or tribal affinity are the bottom line for doing business, those cultures are consistently hamstrung. They're still decades and decades behind the rest of the developed world, right? It makes sense. If it's acceptable to lie to someone beyond your extended family, you'll have a devil of a time doing much business. If it's acceptable to lie to someone who is not in your own tribe, you're going to have a devil of a time doing business. If it's internally acceptable to your culture to cheat someone who doesn't embrace your religion, you're going to have a dad-burned devil of a time doing much business. Trust. It's that simple. But wow, is building trust ever complicated? I mean, my good counselor friend Randy told me that between persons, it takes 7 positive actions to overcome 1 negative action. That's just between persons. If that's true, then how do you build a society-wide trust? Whew, that's a toughie. That's a huge riddle to solve because it involves all the complications of culture. If you dissolve the culture, like we're witnessing in American culture today, you dissolve the culture and it won't take long before trust among strangers goes away. Remove those commonalities and begin pitting people against one another? Why, it won't take long before entire groups begin boycotting one another's businesses. Oh, wait, that's already occurring. Sheesh. Are we nearing an enormous societal collapse? Wow, trust is huge stuff. And this is all related to human nature, and human nature is meshed in cultural configurations. And that dynamic about trust between individuals is applicable to economics at the societal level, which is really a matter of trust between thousands and 10,000s and eventually millions of individual strangers. Do you ever hear news types talk about the economic outlook or consumer expectations? Me too. And those are macrocosmic ways to forecast the future based on the level of trust today. Because people might stop spending. They might not invest in a home remodel if they think a recession is around the corner. But their slowed spending can lead to recession. It's so complex, it's so fragile. Now, obviously, trust isn't the only factor at work in economics, but it is a core element of how things work.
If you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. If you like a series or an episode, make sure to like it, save it, share it, or head over to iTunes to leave a review. It helps me know what you think about the podcast, and it keeps us in good ranking when you leave those reviews. Oh, and you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook by searching for the handle Uncensored Unprofessor.
Well, let's flesh this out. Let's compare capitalism and socialism. And first I should clarify, choosing an ideal system of economics is like choosing an ideal system of church governance. There isn't one. Pick your poison. But let me first make some broad comparisons between capitalism and socialism. Capitalism begins with the assumption that human beings are selfish, self-consumed, self-driven, and essentially fallen. Socialism begins with the assumption that human beings are noble, concerned for your neighbor, and essentially good. One of my preset FM radio stations goes to country music, and when I hear Luke Bryan's "Most People Are Good" song, I have to turn the channel. It's not only gloppy and syrupy, it's actually teaching a non-truth. But first, that's probably the most important distinction between those two philosophies, those two economic systems: human nature. Here's another comparison. Capitalism, at least here in the United States, capitalism begins with the assumption that government itself, because it's comprised of selfish and greedy people, needs checks on its power. And especially power limitations need to be placed on government so people can go about doing their business, making and selling stuff. Socialism, as 100 years of its presence on the planet has made clear, socialism begins with the assumption that government is exactly how you solve problems confronting humanity. And so, for socialism, government is viewed as the means for reallocating goods and commodities and money. Here's another comparison. Capitalism believes capital, which is money, stock, wealth, stuff, all of that needs to be innovated, produced, fostered. Socialism believes there is a mostly fixed sum of capital in the world that is just waiting to be fairly divvied up and doled out by the power of the government. Capitalism believes that prices need to be freely determined by supply and demand. Socialism believes that prices need to be determined by government-established controls. Capitalism holds that people have many motivations, not least of which is crude greed. Socialism holds that people are chiefly motivated by power, and so socialists hold that everyone is secretly trying to get over on all the other groups. Capitalism is grounded in the belief that people need to be free if they're going to innovate and produce and build new industries, if they're going to flourish. Socialism is grounded in the belief that people need to be committed to one another in solidarity if there's going to be equality and the good of everyone. And you guys, with just those few comparisons at hand, we can see that these are not just two equal but different ways to slice the pie. They don't even agree on what the pie is. Capitalism holds that the size of the pie can fluctuate, and it thinks humanity will come up with new solutions to new problems. Socialism holds that there is a finite and quantifiable amount of pie to be divvied up, and it thinks we're going to run out. We're going to run out of fossil fuels, or we're going to run out of water. So they don't even agree on what the pie is. And of course they don't at all agree on how the pie should be doled out. Capitalism holds that those who innovate and take risks and work hard should earn their big slice of the pie. Socialism holds that people, no matter how hard they work or even whether they work, should all be given equal portions of pie. There was a famous joke under Soviet communism. They pretend to pay us, we pretend to work. Those two don't even agree on what constitutes human nature. Capitalism and socialism don't even agree on who constitutes a pie eater. So it follows that they do not agree on what it is that motivates human beings, on how human beings are wired. So please, you guys, these are not two equal but different worldviews. This is not like comparing Toyota and Honda, two competing auto companies that want to help you get to grandma's for Thanksgiving. No, capitalism and socialism are fundamentally, necessarily distinct. And so it's not surprising that their respective visions for human existence are dramatically different. They want very different things for humanity. They are each guided by a radically distinct telos. Do they each have their defenders? Well, of course. Just listen to Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. But more personally, back in 2008, 2009, I led 2 short-term missions trips to Ukraine. We spent time playing with, presenting the gospel to orphans there. But once we were in a village named Borodyanka, and we were talking with an elderly gentleman there in the park. And through an interpreter, I asked him whether he liked things better now or back under the Soviet regime. And he said, "Oh, under the communists. Under the communists, we could always count on some daily bread, on an occasional pack of cigarettes, the necessary fuel to heat our houses in the winter cold. They'd give us some electricity. But today, under capitalism, everyone's motivated by greed. The young people only want to dress like they're from the United States. Things are far more expensive. People work much harder." I'm guessing he was near 80 years old, and he longed for the days of communist provision, because clearly he liked being taken care of by the government. I want to compare him with J.D. Vance. I just read his book, Hillbilly Elegy. And here's Vance reflecting on both having grown up a hillbilly in Kentucky and then doing a stint in the Marine Corps. "For all of my grandma's, 'You can do anything, don't be like those bleepers who think the deck is stacked against them.' For all of my grandma's diatribes, her message had only partially set in before I enlisted. Surrounding me was another message, that I and the people like me weren't good enough. Well, the Marine Corps replaced that mentality with something else, something that loathes excuses. No, I'm not saying ability doesn't matter, it certainly helps. But there's something powerful about realizing you've undersold yourself, that somehow your mind confused lack of effort for inability. And this is why whenever people ask me what I'd most like to change about the white working class, I say, the feeling that our choices don't matter. The Marine Corps excised that feeling like a surgeon does a tumor. You see, under socialism, the old green-eyed Ukrainian man, he rather liked being taken care of. He didn't have to think of several things every day. And under capitalism, J.D. Vance took pride in having worked hard. And with the help of many relationships, he made something different out of his life story. Those two anecdotes show us the difference between government dependence and personal independence. Those two are dramatically different postures toward life. They not only meet people's needs differently, they make for differing persons. They build profoundly different cultures. Hey, the UU thinking doesn't happen only on my podcasts. I send out regular newsletters. I'd be happy to have you in that loop. You can subscribe at uncensoredunprofessor.com. There's some ground level comparison. Let's talk macrocosmic. What have those two visions of reality, capitalism and socialism, each respectively produced? Let's do the failures of each first. Capitalism has produced fiscal inequality between people, although an even larger inequality predated capitalism. Capitalism has produced market failures, life-sucking and freedom-destroying monopolies. Capitalism produced monopolies that obliterate mom-and-pop industry. About 2.5 years ago, Tanya and I took a vow. We try our best to only eat at local restaurants because we know how big chains can just ruin mom-and-pop eateries. Capitalism has produced the intractable problem of lobbyists bribing politicians. What is going on with the big pharma opioid addiction tidal wave today? It's unspeakable. What politician is doing anything about it? Capitalism took brutal advantage, takes advantage of people in lesser developed nations. Capitalism has definitely caused the entire planet to become materialistic idolaters. Capitalism has caused us to view one another as commodities and objects, means to an end. On that point, Karl Marx was spot on. So yeah, capitalism's track record is replete with evils. What then about socialism? Well, it's gifted the planet with market inefficiency, failure to incentivize both hard work and new products. It's embedded in a constant oligarchical structure. It's unilaterally bereft of imagination. It has no playfulness. There's no beauty. It's a constant fountain of unspeakable tyranny. And I got to say thanks to economicshelp.org for some of that comparison. You guys, socialism has ruined every single country where it's been attempted, full stop. Excluding China, which is today a weird mixture of Communist Party control and capitalistic market forces. In part, capitalism works in China because the state brutalizes different sectors of the poor, so it's really not a true free market system. But excluding China, every nation that has tried to install socialism proper has seen the living conditions of its citizens worsen, usually in rapid fashion. And that's not just the biggies like Russia or China. It includes, among others, Cuba, Nicaragua, North Korea, Venezuela. Regarding Venezuela, which sits on top of some of the largest oil fields on the planet, let me quote New York Times writer Bret Stephens. Venezuela is an economic basket case, a humanitarian disaster, and a dictatorship under Nicolas Maduro, whose demise cannot come soon enough. Inflation has soared over the years, power outages and power cuts are commonplace. And whereas a couple decades ago, many Venezuelans owned Ford pickup trucks, today almost 90% of Venezuela's citizens live in poverty. Under former President Hugo Chavez, the socialist government began introducing price controls on flour, cooking oil, toiletries. But, as can be expected, price controls didn't work. And soon, the few Venezuelan businesses producing those items no longer found it profitable to make them. Today, people rummage through the trash and garbage dumps for food. Andreas Malave, in Investor's Business Daily, he's a Venezuelan. He writes that the average Venezuelan countryman has lost 19 pounds since 2014 because of the struggle to get daily food supplies. It's no surprise that some 4 million Venezuelans have left the country over the last 5 years. The downfall of Venezuela has been alarming. How does it happen so fast? Well, the answer is expectations dwindle, people lose hope, the system squashes innovation, the system teaches that no matter how hard you work, you can't get ahead. There's no profit motive. Trust gets crushed. Does that happen under capitalism? Yeah, but not as unilaterally and not as ubiquitously. It doesn't happen everywhere. It doesn't happen all the time. Just what does happen under socialism? I mean, it should be grand. Everyone gets equal pay. Everyone's treated the same. Everyone can count on the same amount of surplus per person as the next guy. Everyone's equal. It should work, but it doesn't. Just what happens under free market capitalism. People come up with ideas to solve needs and problems. Tanya regularly says to me, I want to come up with a brand new idea. And then those people with ideas implement and produce those ideas, and they sell those ideas to others, and all of that creates jobs. And jobs can foster people's sense of dignity, as we saw earlier with J.D. Vance turning his hillbilly life around. Of course, capitalism is no messiah, but it has lifted a couple billion people out of abject poverty in the last 60 years. Because of capitalism, not socialism, billions today now enjoy running water, electricity, enough food, TVs, and cell phones. Socialism doesn't work because it fails to accurately understand human nature. Let's reiterate that earlier Soviet joke. They pretend to pay us. We pretend to work. You don't need a psychiatrist to know that if everyone's going to get paid equally, then some will certainly work less diligently than others. I mean, if I wash dishes, but you're a skilled chef, shouldn't you get paid more? Not under socialism. A coerced equality wouldn't allow it. So where's the incentive? I'll tell you where it is. It's swirling down that porcelain throne. It's being flushed down the toilet. Why spend years at medical school if you're going to get paid the same as a chicken farmer? It's basic human nature, people. If there's nothing in it for me, if there's no incentive, if there's not more in it for me, then I'm not going to work harder or commit myself to some arduous path. I'm not going to delay gratification. Under socialism, no one pursues a delayed gratification, even though everyone's gratification is delayed. I should patent that one. I should turn that one into a bumper sticker. Under socialism, no one pursues a delayed gratification, even though everyone's gratification is delayed. And then do that multiple times to millions of people, and society will collapse. And so far, it always has collapsed under a resolutely socialist structure. You just can't gut incentive and think people will be willing to work hard. It's a denial of fundamental human nature. Pope John Paul II, he died in 2005, God bless his soul. Pope John Paul grew up in communist Poland. He witnessed what socialism had done to his beautiful homeland. And I want to quote him on the deep flaws of socialist philosophy. He said, quote, "The fundamental error of socialism is anthropological in nature. Socialism considers the individual person simply as an element, a molecule within the social organism, so that the good of the individual is completely subordinated to the functioning of the socioeconomic mechanism. Socialism likewise maintains that the good of the individual can be realized without reference to his free choice, to the unique and exclusive responsibility which he exercises in the face of good or evil. Man is thus reduced to a series of social relationships, and the concept of the person as the autonomous subject of moral decision disappears, the very subject whose decisions build the social order. From this mistaken conception of the person there arise both a distortion of law, which defines the sphere of the exercise of freedom, and an opposition to private property. A person who is deprived of something he can call his own, and of the possibility of earning a living through his own initiative, comes to depend on the social machine and on those who control it. This makes it much more difficult for him to recognize his dignity as a person, and hinders progress toward the building of an authentic human community. There's Pope John Paul II. He grew up under that craziness, under that lack of beauty, under that lack of understanding of human nature. Or more simply, here's that famous rock philosopher Frank Zappa. Communism doesn't work because people like to own stuff. Because the truth is, you guys, under socialism, everyone is in fact not equal. The ruling political party is always more equal than the non-politicians. The capital, the good stuff, always goes to the political rulers first and foremost. It happened in Russia and all of its satellites, and it's happening in Venezuela today. The billions of dollars of American money that goes to socialist foreign governments, far too much of it is spent on the political ruling classes alone. That money buys foreign political affiliation, but it does not help their people. It's a horror. And it's a horror because its premises are flawed. Don't believe me? Please, oh, for the love of me, please go read How the Great Truth Dawned by Gary Saul Morson. You can find it online, How the Great Truth Dawned. He talks about the unspeakable evils that were commonplace under the Soviets, and how they justified torture, and how they they delighted in dehumanizing people for the sake of the system. That article will peel your eyelids back. It will help you understand what's at stake when we consider these massive cultural distinctions. There was a famous Russian author named Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He suffered 8 years in the Soviet Gulag, and he once wrote, "Unlimited power in the hands of limited people always leads to cruelty." End quote. Time and time and time again. Even though each new naive generation comes along and thinks, but they were evil, we are good, we would never do that to one another or to you, we are good. If we could just put good people, good like us, people like us in charge, we'd do socialism right. Time and time and time again. There are no good people. Again, here's the philosopher-writer Solzhenitsyn. Gradually it was disclosed to me while I was in prison that the line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart, and through all human hearts. End quote. Elsewhere, Solzhenitsyn put it similarly poignant. He said, quote, If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? In 1989, Billy Joel put it like this: "We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire. No, we didn't light it, but we tried to fight it." Or 2,000 years ago, Jesus said it still more succinctly: "There is no one who is good but God." And all of that to say, if evil didn't exist in every human heart, socialism would be great. What? Yeah, I realize I'm attempting to do something unique with this podcast. Get Christians to purposefully turn their brains on. This isn't church. There's no altar call. It isn't school. There's no final exams. It's just a strange little show about thinking in light of Christ, framing the world in light of His truth and coming and His beauty. Will you help me? Pledges at Patreon greatly encourage me. So then, what about economics and the common good? Well, we could measure it in one of two ways: which has done the most good, capitalism or socialism? Well, there's really no comparison. Or we could, say, ask, which has done the most evil? And again, it's really no comparison. Socialism destroys entire nations swiftly. But another way, I think a much better kingdom of God way to measure the two: which fosters human dignity better? Which facilitates culture building better? Which animates the arts and music and beauty? Which makes people want to become and grow? Because I've been to post-Soviet Eastern Europe, I can tell you that socialism is not only an economic disaster, it is a disaster regarding human dignity. Socialism paints everything in ugly shades of gray. I mean, the very architecture of socialism reflected how ugly a philosophy it is. Big, square, gray concrete and steel turds for buildings. Art vacated of beauty. Paintings vacated of beauty. The aesthetic of socialism reflects its soul, a craven, barren, empty, gray pile of meaninglessness. And still, all of that, and we have millions of people in our own country who are enamored with the prospects of socialism. They obviously haven't read a single book on what socialism has done to people, or to culture, or to the common good. If you will indulge me, because I realize this episode is much longer than normal, but you guys, this is so critical because it's going to shred our society. If you'll indulge me, I'm going to get pastoral. I'm going to play a doctor of souls for a moment instead of my usual philosopher-theologian role. I'm not going to talk about social economic justice, even though those things are implicit within what I'm going to say. In the kingdom of God, what really matters is the shape of your heart, the orientation of your soul. That was Jesus in every scene. You see, progressives today say that what is of ultimate consequence is justice, social justice, which implies economic justice, which in turn implies that there are those who are systemically evil. And all of that's for the support and promulgation of justice. The progressive focuses on entire people groups. They say that there are entire people groups who should be outed and shamed and silenced. Repent! Just admit you didn't know you were secretly complicit in evil and let us rule. That's the progressive gospel. With Jesus, go read the Gospels. With Jesus, the focus is on human hearts. Repent, he said. Change your mind. Change your heart, because eternity is near. Eternity has broken in, personally. And in light of the eternal God, nothing is significant. So hear me clearly today, you guys. No, I'm not saying capitalism is taught or promoted in the Bible. I am saying that the progressive ideology necessarily violates a Christian worldview. My you friends, those two approaches could not be more divergent. Progressives say the group you belong to defines you. Jesus says you can be different from your group, from the world even, by the shape of your heart. Progressives say that group dynamics are greater than your soul, that unrecognized social evils are more abiding than the love or the hope pulsing in your heart. Jesus says that you can choose in significant ways who you are, who you serve, what you love. Again, it's a dramatically, profoundly different perspective. Jesus never judged people on the basis of their origin, their skin color, or their family genealogies. Progressivism judges all of us based on our ethnicity, our skin color, our geographic region, or who we voted for president. It's thoroughly prejudicial. So the answer to economic horror, the answer for doing economics, soul sculpting. How are souls being sculpted? How are souls being shaped? What is the origami of your soul? Because it's souls that make and shape economics. It's souls that are embedded in human nature. It's human nature that makes for entire cultures. It's entire cultures that produce economics. It's economics that shape souls. Lord have mercy. Jesus Christ said, "Something greater than Jonah and the prophets is among you," Matthew 12:41. Jesus said, "Something greater than King Solomon is among you," Matthew 12:42. Jesus said, "Something greater than the God-ordained temple in Jerusalem is here," Matthew 12:6. What did those phrases mean? What did Jesus mean? That in his person eternity was present. The presence of eternity changes everything, measures everything, judges everything, prioritizes everything, but it goes to the heart. It concerns soul sculpting. One more time, here's Solzhenitsyn. Bless you, prison. Bless you for being in my life. For there, lying upon the rotting prison straw, I came to realize that the object of life is not prosperity as we are made to believe, but the maturity of the human soul. Oh, truth, we need you, truth. Oh, beauty, we hunger for you, beauty. Come, God of truth. Come, beautiful God, and live deep down inside my heart, my very mind. Thanks, you guys. I'll see you back here next Wednesday for the latest episode, and please, for the love of society, stop emotionally vomiting and turn your brains on, everybody.